Hi, I'm Matt Crowley. This particular webinar is going to be on tag-along and drag-along rights. This will be a short one, but it'll be pretty important. So for shareholders that are entering into either a buy-sell agreement or perhaps an investor rights agreement or just an agreement among the co-founders on how they're going to treat each other, it's important to consider how to handle situations where you're either in the minority or you're in the majority in terms of the number of shares you have when you think about the exit. So when I talk about the exit, I'm not thinking about your company going public, I'm thinking about someone acquiring your company. Most of the time the acquirer is going to buy the assets of your company, that's the reality. But in the event that you manage to sell your company and the buyer wants to buy the stock or the membership interests, whatever form of equity you have, if I'm a shareholder in your company and I only own a third of the shares, one of the things that I'm going to worry about is what happens if Google comes to buy our company and they're more than happy to buy 67% of the company or 51% of the shares. As a 33% shareholder, I might get left behind. I'm very worried about that. In a situation like that, I would like what's called a tag-along right. And the basics of the tag-along right are if the majority shareholders get an offer from an acquirer to buy their shares, they would agree in a contract clause that they are prohibited from selling their shares unless they can get the buyer to also buy 100% of the shares, or at least the minority that has this right. And that right would be called a tag-along right. The minority wants to tag along with the majority. Now, the majority is going to want something in return for granting a tag-along right, because obviously if I own 67% of the company, I really would rather not give the right to a minority to stop me from being able to sell my shares. So the majority might be willing to make a trade. They might want what's called a drag-along right. A drag-along right means if Google makes an offer to buy all of the stock of our company, they make an offer to buy our company for $10 million. However, you're in the minority, you own a third of the company, and you're crazy. You think that the company's worth $1 billion and we're selling too soon. That may be reality, but if the majority thinks that's a good deal, the majority would like to be able to drag you along and say if a majority of the shares, or 67%, whatever percent you agree on, decides that they would like to sell their shares, that the minority agrees per that contract clause that they will be required to sell their shares. So normally you won't see a tag-along without a drag-along. They balance each other out. But now you know what a tag-along right is and what a drag-along right is and how the negotiation between you and your partners may go. So next up, we'll be talking about other co-founder rights. Thanks.